$1 million casino. This Barbary Coast is a gamble.
This and more next on Speedweek. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Speedweek. I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. The stock car portion of Daytona Speedweeks is over, but the Winston Cup season is underway, and there was a lot of other racing activity this past week. We begin our review at where else? Daytona.
Well, first indications are that 1987's Winston Cup Series could be a repeat of 1985. The 29th edition of the Great American Race went, for the most part, as expected. Bill Elliott took his Ford to the front from pole position and led until the first set of pit stops. The challenge of outside front row starter rookie Davey Allison never developed. Right rear wheel problems during his first stop forced him to back up and lose valuable time while the tire was secured. Then the 25-year-old the tire next lap and went behind the wall for repairs. 10 drivers exchanged the lead 28 times. Those who showed strength included Buddy Baker, who was after his second 500 win in an Olds. Ken Schrader, who had beaten Elliott in a qualifying race on Thursday in a Ford, and Benny Parsons Chevy, it had won the other 125-mile qualifier. Only 4 caution periods for 15 laps. There were several close calls like this one involving Greg Sachs and Buddy Baker, but no spins or accidents. Did that surprise Parsons?
Not really, because after Thursday, after the qualifying race, at Daytona, the pressure is over.
13 laps from the finish, Elliott pits for the final time. Into the lead goes Jeff Bodine, last year's winner. He and crew chief Gary Nelson took the chance of going the distance without another stop. But the Stars and Stripes, Jeff's nickname for the car, ran dry with just 3 laps to go. Elliott beat Parsons by a half second with the average speed of 176.2 miles an hour, 1.5 miles an hour short of Buddy Baker's 1980 record. 2 other veterans were 3rd and 4th. Richard Petty fell short of his 8th 500 victory, but it was his best finish in a Daytona 500 since 1981. Baker settled for a strong 4th in the Olds. For Awesome Bill, his second in 3 years was better than his first win.
You know, everybody tore up 2 years ago. Nobody fell out this time.
Did you suspect that Bodine might be having problems with gas?
I really didn't know. You know, I knew that he was going to, knowing the history of that car, I knew they were going to go as far as they could, and I just hoped that he'd run out, and he did.
Who was your biggest challenger today?
Well, you know, there was several. Baker was strong, Earnhardt was strong, and, you know, depending on if they got me in a pack there, I wasn't getting through the corners as good as I wanted to be, but still, yes, the car got better toward the end of the racetrack, but Earnhardt got strong also.
Football traditions may be carrying over into auto racing. Last year, Bodine wore a Jim McMahon-type headband in victory lane. This year, Bill Elliott gets the Bill Parcells Gatorade treatment.
A couple of sidebars from the 500. Rodney Combs, the dirt racer he is, was the highest finishing rookie in the race. He was 19th, 3 laps off the pace. Jimmy Means, who finished 24th, has secured Turtle Wax as a sponsor for at least 4 races.
The 15 caution laps tied a record set in 1980 for fewest number of caution laps. Cale Yarborough extended his record of most consecutive 500 starts to 24. And bad weather has forced a postponement of the second Winston Cup race scheduled for this weekend in Richmond, Virginia. It'll be run March 8th between the Rockingham and Atlanta events.
Speedweek from Daytona also launched the International Race of Champions. The Great Wall of Pavement has been tough on IROC machinery in recent years. But therefore, its Thunderbird formation start belied the action that will start right shortly. Michael Andretti begins the fireworks with Ron Simmons' flip over the 4th tie that he took Bobby Rahal with him. Wally Dallenbach Jr. has developed the 8th high and gallantly hung on for a couple of laps, but once forced out of line by Bill Elliott, a Ray Guy punched backwards. Only Darrell Waltrip struggled to keep up as the air squadron continued. The converse was Jeff Bodine. He was beginning to sense he had something, the only one successfully passing on his own. Less than halfway, the IROC Lady in Black, Daytona, lashed out. Unser Sr. shredded a tire and took out Mario Andretti, Dallenbach, and Scott Pruitt. Amazingly, as if they really needed it here, every stock car IROCer walked through. At the halfway point, Bodine was really showing his hand, going low in this Indy 500 alignment. And with 2 laps to go, Jeff began his draft shrugging precedent. That move, a little extra power, and one final adroit zig when Waltrip zagged, and Bodine had won the first IROC race ever been in.
The 300-mile race for NASCAR's Grand National Division, formerly the late model Sportsman, lived up to its reputation as being one of the most competitive on the Speedweek schedule. 9 of the 41 starters would be in the Winston Cup 500 the next day. The event was only 10 laps old when Northeast Modified driver Brett Hearn nearly gets airborne in turn number 4, but manages to keep the car away from the wall as it slid to a stop. Dale Earnhardt was one of the early leaders as the drafting train began to form. Pole sitter and Grand National regular Tommy Houston was one of the early retirees with mechanical problems. Turn 4 again. This time it's Merv Chrysler, another Northeast Modified driver, hard into the wall, but Merv was not injured. Bobby Allison had the year's first pace car encounter as he retired on lap 79. Earnhardt's demise was signaled when he dropped low on the track and watched the others pass in the high groove. Then with less than 7 laps to go, a multi-car crash between turns 1 and 2 takes out Bill Elliott, but it obviously had no effect on his performance the next day. The green comes out with 1 lap to go. Jeff Bodine gets the jump. Then in turn number 4, Darrell Waltrip looks strong. But Jeff holds off the challenge and wins in one of the few V8s in the field. It was his second win in as many days.
The Charlotte Daytona Dash race for subcompact international sedans was the black cloud of Speedweek. The veteran and steady dasher Larry Cottle finally had his undisputed week. Larry has been near the top most of the dash season, but never a dominating week on a big track like this one. The early laps he contested with Danny McLean and Hut Strickland. Several cautions kept the field close before Hut dropped by the wayside. Watch the lower portion of the track. Dr. Jewel Sturgill explodes into Joe Young. Joe, a Richmond native, died instantly. This lap 36 multi-car crash was in the 3rd and 4th turns. Young had massive internal injuries and a fractured skull. The remains of Sturgill's car were almost as bad. McLean and Cottle were left to fight it out, but Larry won with relative ease in the end.
The latest condition report on Dr. Jewel Sturgill indicates an upgrade from serious to good. Although he remains in the surgical concentrated care unit at Halifax Medical Center in Daytona, he is said to be making rapid progress.
Speedweek is brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radio. We make your car perform. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. When car-carrying people reach for the best, they reach for Quaker State Motor Oil.
In our next segment, Miller needs just a little more than first aid.
While part of Johnson & Johnson leads the way in modified.
The World Series of Asphalt Racing, New Smyrna Beach, Florida. The week of 8 late model races produced 4 different winners, but an old familiar name in the headline event. This sequence sums up a big part of the competition. Artco's Joe Shear leading, something he did a lot of this past week. ASA's Dick Trickle, who used to be identified as Artco. Second, Canadian Russ Erlin, a good week. And All-Pros in Florida's David Rogers. Jamie Albee and Dave Dion were 2 Canadian-American Tour racers whose car specs changed the most this year, who showed up. But the week belonged to David Rogers, who won 4. Trickle won twice, and Joe Shear and Lee Falk each won 1. A couple of moments of controversy. Everybody didn't get completely along, but that's racing. And there was one hair-raising start when Rogers lost control, and one major looking crash when Butch Miller drilled an exposed end of a steel guardrail. The late model scourge of the World Series last year, the whole year really, goes a week without a top 5. The car was severed, but can you believe word is they repaired this? Mike Eddy had his share of moments too, all that he would like to forget. He too, no top 5. But the headline event, the 100 lap of Friday night. There was a race for a third of the event, then Dick Trickle went by, and next thing you know, he was clutching another trophy. But Rogers is the 1987 Florida late model champ. Surprising Lee Falk is next, tied with Russ Erlin, then Tom Jones and Trickle.
The World Series also included the modified. 8 nights of racing ended last Saturday night, but during the week there were a few interesting incidents. This 3-car that became a 6-car accident led to a considerable amount of gesturing and probably name-calling, but no blows were exchanged. Jamie Tomeno was one of 3 winners. He checkered 2 features. This is the start of Saturday night's feature. The driver of the 00 is late model star Dick Trickle. His best finish in the 8 nights was a 4th. Jimmy Spencer and Reggie Ruggiero were the other 2 winners. This action from the final race Saturday night showed just how competitive the series was. Spencer won this one and 2 others, but Reggie's 3 wins combined with his other finishes gave him the overall crown.
Again this year, the New York-based DIRT Modifieds have begun their season quite early. DIRT Modifieds ran 5 shows during the week, and the big winner is Sammy Johnson out of Clifton Springs, New York. Johnson aboard the Finger Lakes Light, stock number 27J, took home top honors on 3 of the 5 nights. He backed up his 3 wins with 2 second-place finishes en route to the Winter Tour crown. Other winners during the week were Hamilton, New Jersey's Jimmy Horton and Sinking Springs, Pennsylvania's Kenny Brightsville. For Johnson, the biggest win of his 3 wins came in the 50-lap finale. He took the lead at the outset, but was chased down by the veteran Kenny Brightsville, a many-time winner. Brightsville moved in front on lap 11 and appeared to be on his way to the $5,000 win. However, that bid ended when the transmission let go, sending Brightsville behind the wall and Johnson onto the checker. He was followed by Billy Pouch, Doug Hoffman, Billy Schenkel, and Davey Wenger. Johnson has a great start on this unusual early dirt season, which continues with a 5-night swing through Texas this weekend.
And also in Florida, the opening of the USAC season. Larry Rice won the opener of the Silver Crown Championship Dirt Car Series. The USAC non-wing sprints ran at the same track where the Silver Crown cars had been the day before. Still some water in some areas of the track. Here's Daryl Hannestad sent to the showers early, or perhaps a bath is a better term. Some good wheel-to-wheel racing in preliminaries. Here's Hannestad again, this time rubbing wheels with Andy Stapp. In the 30-lap feature, Jack Hewitt outran Rich Vogler and Greg Woolley to turn 1. Fred Linder, subbing for the injured Kenny Jacobs, is among those involved in this 3-car tangle just out of turn 2. The race boiled down to a Hewitt-Vogler barn burner. Vogler took the lead here, but on just the next lap, Hewitt is back in command for a while. And things really got close when they started lapping traffic. Todd Kane bumped out of the way as the 2 leaders plow through. Vogler went on to win this show, which will be one of the very few non-wing events USAC stages this year.
Up next in USAC Midgets, what goes around comes around.
And the time of the season for IndyCar testing rolls around. The IndyCars don't begin their campaign until early April. But testing continues in the warmer climate. Over the winter, car champion Bobby Rahal made big news by announcing he's switching from a March to a Lola. This was his first test of the car at Phoenix. The new car has some changes, reduced frontal area and fuel cell height. The wheelbase is 2 inches longer, and the overall width is 2 inches narrower on the Speedway version. He's now put about 600 miles on the car, and so far, no serious problems.
I'm very, very pleased with the way the Lola is going. It reacts to all the changes, and I think we've made the right decision. We'll have to wait and see when everybody gets here for the first race and see what's going on once and for all. But certainly I'm very pleased with the way the car has gone. It's been extremely reliable and really no problems whatsoever, and it seems to be quick right out of the box.
Also on the Phoenix Mile recently, Kevin Kogan. Now this is the 86 car, but it has the Chevy engine in it. Patrick Team is one of 3. The others are Penske and Haas that will run the Ilmore Chevy this season. By the way, Kogan destroyed that car in a test crash at Phoenix but escaped injury, and Roger Penske's new cars have not yet arrived yet to England. They're a little late.
And for the 2nd straight year, Mario Andretti has crashed very hard at Laguna Seca. His latest wreck last weekend destroyed the car, but Mario escaped injury again. And an IndyCar driver who lost his ride with Dick Simon may be getting another. We hear a new team is being formed and will hire Raul Boesel.
2 well-respected personalities from Indy in the 50s have died. Frank Curtis, whose cars filled as many as 2/3 of the field in the post-World War II era, passed away. He was 79. He built Novi's, the famous pole-sitting Cummins diesel, and won 5 times. And Andy Linden, a tough World War Marine whose best finish 4th was in his rookie year of 1951.
The Toronto City Council has gone on record as favoring an IndyCar race in their city for the next 5 years. In its inaugural race last year, the city placed a 50,000 limit on the number of spectators allowed into Exhibition Park to watch the event. Now, that limit has been raised to 80,000 this year.
Construction began this week in suburban Detroit on new Corvettes that are being built by Protofab Racing. They will replace the Camaros currently being campaigned in the IMSA GTO division by that team. The new cars are expected to debut around Riverside. One will be powered by a V8 and the other by a V6.
And you thought the indoor season was over, eh? Well, think again. An interesting track, slick, speeds down, but it provided a lot of passing and, seriously, fairly good racing. Now, you probably recognize the unhelmeted driver, Johnny Parsons Jr. The other, Johnny Parsons III, his first USAC race ever. He needs some miles, but I guarantee you it is in the genes. After a busy first lap, Brent Kading emerged as the leader. The Versatile and improving skating was the ticket for this race. But a couple of indoor incidents, maybe pressing just a little too hard, knocked him from contention, as well as a DNF for Parsons Jr. That's the second. After a one-race probation from USAC for an incident at the Phoenix Mile last week, Anthony Simone had another meet of lasting impressions. Despite a flat tire, Mario Brungetto was leading when Anthony forces underneath. Out goes Mario, and up go the temperatures. Not long after, Anthony is trying to hold off Jeff Meyer, but Meyer turns the tables on him and keeps going. Many saw this as unnecessary, and tempers flared trackside. Anthony finished the race, but hometowner Chuck West, after several leaders, went on and won.
The Golden State Motocross Series has encountered a lot of different weather conditions. Last week in Adelanto, it was strong winds and dust that plagued riders and spectators alike. The 500cc class has had only 2 winners, and number 33 Brian Myerscough has had the most, and he registers another. The 250cc class saw number 87 Colin Dugmore from West Germany take Moto 1, but Team Suzuki's Willie Tarot won Moto 2 and the overall. As usual, the 125cc class had the most action. Number 30 Bob Moore swapped first-place finishes with number 16 Doug Duback on a Kajiva. He won the overall. The final race next week near San Francisco will determine the champion.
Rick Johnson returned to winning form in front of his home crowd in San Diego Saturday night and finally took a step toward defending his AMA Supercross crown. He had fallen the first 2 races. Jeff Ward, who won the first 2 rounds of the series, fell on the first lap and restarted in last place. His Kawasaki teammate, Ron Lachine, finished second after challenging Johnson for the lead through most of the main event.
On the Speedweek calendar for February, birthday wishes go out to Formula One champion Alain Prost, who turns 32 on the 24th. Former champ Mario Andretti turns 47 on the 28th. And coming up on March 1st, the Miami Grand Prix, which can be seen right here on ESPN beginning at 3 p.m. CA's Pro Rallying returned to the San Francisco area last weekend. The Barbary Coast Rally was for the benefit of the Muscular Dystrophy Association. The first leg of this rally was held in the parking lot of Candlestick Park in a driving rainstorm. The new rallying format calls for approximately 20% of the total 100-stage miles on paved or partially paved surfaces in a major metropolitan area. Rod Millen in his Mazda RX-7 won this first leg and Stage 2, which was held at Sears Point Raceway. But 10-time Pro Rally champion John Buffum overcame a 22-second deficit and won the event when the stages moved to the roads in the Napa Valley.
The last 2 weeks of car ice racing have eliminated the championship favorites and set up a showdown among 3 who didn't really expect it. 2 weeks ago, St. Paul, after Leighton Reese, who has led every modified race, led and dropped out, veteran Joe Hauser won. Almost 60 started the showroom stock race. Soft ice contributed to numerous rollovers and a track whose definition could not be maintained. A lengthy yellow during the race to reroute the course. Tommy and Bobby, the Archers, won. Last week, Eau Claire may have exposed a new contender to the claim, the Indianapolis of ice racing. The year's biggest race day crowd and one of the biggest purses, thanks to the generosity of Lee Marquardt, a local car dealer. Race organizer Herm Johnson even attracted SCCA's Jody Dangle and a couple of Indy drivers, Gary Bettenhausen and Steve Chassis. The modifieds, Leighton Reese and Kenny Sitch, led and dropped out. Billy Collins won. The showroom stock race. Chassis encouraged Reese team driver Brad Hoyt to a closer inspection of this snow, and this looked like another Archer romp, but a serious crash on the fastest section of the track, with Bobby behind the wheel, knocked them and Scott Gaylord out. The Honda of P.D. Cunningham and John Dozier won. Their first. They shared a point lead by just a few digits over first-year ice racer Judd Jackson. One more race remains.
In St. Gabriel, Quebec, Jacques Villeneuve won again on snowmobiles. It was Villeneuve's 3rd victory in the Sports Series and was marked by his patented and daring power slides on the high side of the corners to the inside of the track. Villeneuve blew by first lap leader Tom Riemenschneider and was never challenged to the checkered flag. Jacques is 10 points behind Bruce Vasseur in the standings as the series heads into its final race February 22nd in Skowhegan, Maine.
You know those funny-looking gas cans used in the Winston Cup racing? Well, they're the subject of this week's Bernstein File, brought to you by Quaker State.
I'm standing beside a can that looks like it's from outer space. It's really not. It's a gas can that's used in Winston Cup racing today. And there's a couple of things that you need to know about this gas can, because it's certainly not like going to your service station and filling up your car. It's made for speed and for handling. Obviously, the handle so someone can wheel it around, the spout that goes into the race car for speed, and the size of the gas can is 11 gallons. Now, NASCAR has a rule, 11 gallons only. If you were to cheat and put an inside container here and possibly gain a little advantage and get caught, they would certainly take the can away from you and give you a great big fine. You're also only allowed to start a short track race with 2 cans and a speedway and a road course with 3 cans. But there's no limit on the amount of gas that it takes to finish the race. It takes 8 to 10 cans of 11 gallons to finish a 500-mile race. In IndyCar racing, it's a little different. You're only allowed so many gallons to finish the race. But not in NASCAR racing. As much as you need, you can continue to send your runners back to the Unical pump and get the gas you need. I'm Kenny Bernstein.
Now here's this week's trivia question. Bill Elliott is the 4th driver to win more than one Daytona 500. Who was the first 2-time winner? A. Bobby Allison, B. Cale Yarborough, C. Fireball Roberts, D. Richard Petty, or E. David Pearson. Larry will have the answer in a moment.
Okay, here's the answer to this week's trivia question. Both Roberts and Pearson have never won the 500 more than once. Cale has 4 victories and Allison has 2. But the answer is D, King Richard Petty. He has 7 500 wins and became the first 2-time winner in 1966.
What was supposed to have been a $100,000 to win 500-lap or 5-hour enduro at Orlando Speed World turned out to be closer to a $30,000 to win affair, but good fun anyway. The cars involved were all 1980 or newer luxury models, including BMWs, Audis. There were a few Saabs, an occasional Chrysler, a Mark 7 or 2, a couple of Cadillacs here and there, and a couple of Tornados. Tim Wilson from Fort Smith, Arkansas, owned one of the cars with a unique feature.
A lot of times you might need a little relief in a race of this size, and so we've got a special facility installed for our driver. That being the toilet on board, just like a Winnebago.
The starting field was only a little over 30 instead of the Hope 4 100, and the story of the race was tire wear, and the fact that every time you came in 4 tires, it's a major, time-consuming job. 500 laps in 3 hours after it began, 1981 ARCA champion Larry Moyer won without serious tire problems.
I blew a tire about 40 laps into the race, and it really bothered me because we only had 2 spares, but we never had no problem. Just run good.
Any scary moments out there, close calls?
I don't know. I ain't walked around and looked at her yet. I don't know how bad she is. If she is, we'll fix her and we'll go again.
Some very interesting entries, though. Larry Moore, Ed Haig.
Right. But, you know, it was the little guys who just bought a car and brought it there that were really fun to watch. It was a good show. Well, next week on Speedweek, the latest news from the world of motorsports, and the World of Outlaw Sprints begin their season. I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. We leave you this week with more from Daytona, of course.
Speedweek has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radios. We make your car perform. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. When car-carrying people reach for the best, they reach for Quaker State Motor Oil.